Good afternoon. It is 1:30 on January 23rd. We are here for our very first Planning, Housing, and Parks Committee meeting. I'm really excited to be here with my two colleagues, to be joining Councilmember Giwando, coming from the prior Planning, Housing, and Economic Development Committee that we served for 4 years on together and did significant work, and as well as our new colleague, Natalie Fani-Gonzalez, who we're really excited to join here as well. I'm really excited for the opportunities that we have at this committee to really dive deeply into land use matters, and specifically to continue the efforts that we have undertaken over the last 4 years related to housing, which I think the prior council really led on under the partnership and leadership of our former colleague, Hans Riemer, who wanted to acknowledge him here as well. And I really do believe that this committee in particular, this council more broadly, is going to be building on those efforts related to housing in particular, and on land use, parks, and other related issues that this committee is going to take up. And we are here today actually to talk about one of the strategies that's really a continuation in many ways from prior work that the prior council and the previous iteration of this committee had undertaken. So before we get to the first bill, Bill 3322, I wanted to provide a general opportunity for colleagues to make any comments if they'd like. If not, we can get into the bulk of the agenda. You want to wait till the bill? Yeah. Appreciate it. I just wanted to note we are coming straight in here from our state legislative program, and so we have assumed our general seats. We won't always be separated here by multiple seats, but in some ways we are socially distancing here today, but appreciate that. So why don't we get started? I'll offer an opportunity for colleagues to speak on the specific items. We have two items before us today. The first item is Bill 3322, which is Capital Improvements Program Affordable Housing Feasibility Study Required. I am the primary sponsor. The original co-sponsors were Councilmembers Katz, Albornoz, Navarro, Riemer, and Rice, and now we also have Fani-Gonzalez, Stewart, and Balcom. Sorry, I wanted to separate those two. So an interesting dynamic where we have some of our prior colleagues on the initial bill that was introduced on November 15th, and then some additional colleagues here at the new council. Public hearing was held on January 17th, at which 5 speakers testified on the bill. This bill is really important. It is really a focus on leading on housing, where the county government leads with our own resources, our own land, our own commitments, our own projects and priorities, because if we want to realistically solve our housing crisis, we can't do it without fully taking advantage of all county resources, which especially includes finite county lands. It's not the only strategy. We need many strategies, but this is one important tool in our toolkit. Our housing needs, as we all know, are significant. Our land, as we all know, is extremely scarce. And so we have to aggressively pursue each and every opportunity with each and every project as they present themselves. And so this bill will ensure that consideration, serious, legitimate consideration of co-location of housing gets a fair shot and a thorough review. The intent of the bill is to establish a checkpoint with the executive after the study is completed to increase public transparency and allow for an examination of all information and data that's available, not only by the council, but by community and impacted stakeholders, so that we can help decide how this is going to work and how we achieve our housing goals. Specifically, the bill requires an affordable housing feasibility study with facility planning and development of program of requirements, site selection, and land acquisition. And the bottom line is, once the capital improvement program, the capital budget, is presented, it's oftentimes too late. The decisions in many cases have already been made. And the important discussion that needs to take place in a collaborative effort between the executive and the council hasn't happened. And we ultimately end up with an impossible situation where you have to choose between not funding an important community need like a library or like a recreation center or another similar public building, or not taking advantage of a housing opportunity that we could if we leverage resources, if we leverage certain partnerships, if we made certain decisions. And I am not naive to think that certain decisions don't need to be made in order to make these projects happen. But the important aspect of this is so that the discussion can be had to determine whether or not those commitments, those decisions are appropriate in order to make a meaningful impact on our housing goals and our housing needs. And that is the effort that we're trying to undertake here today. I did want to note before I turn it over to colleagues, I appreciate the significant input that we've had from community members and stakeholders, the support that we've heard and the input from colleagues, and especially wanted to thank our terrific council staff and council attorney who's been amazing working together with Mary Geis and Cindy Gibson in my office, and also wanted to personally acknowledge the executive branch for their collaboration with us, particularly the Department of General Services, as well as the second floor, Mr. Hartman, and wanted to acknowledge, and we'll get to this later on in the bill, and in the discussion today, but we did work out a few additional changes which we're going to move forward in a collaborative way with the support, assuming we have it, of colleagues to be able to move forward in a collaborative way, which was always the intention of this bill, to work together with the executive branch and the county council in order to make serious and put teeth into the requirements to co-locate housing and to make sure that we are aggressively pursuing it at each and every opportunity that we have. And so at the appropriate time, we will get to that point as well. But before I turn it over and we get into the meat of the agenda here, I wanted to turn it over to colleagues. I'm going to start with Councilmember Jawando, who has really focused on these issues and in fact really took the lead on one of the most high-profile examples of these type of projects in the last budget cycle. And so with that, I'll turn to you, Councilmember Jawando.
Thank you, Chair Friedson. Congratulations on the first convening here, and good to be with my colleague, Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez. Yeah, I was just reminiscing about last May when we were taking up the budget last year, and we made a move on the Chevy Chase Library project. I was lead for libraries at the time, and now chair of the Education Committee, and there was a big community interest and rallies around moving for co-location at the Chevy Chase Library, an area where we need housing and affordable housing, and where it was primed because of the exorbitant cost of the proposed refresh there. And I introduced a CIP amendment that passed unanimously with all my colleagues supporting, to require the co-location of housing when that library is rebuilt. And I think it was an important example of this type of collaboration that is going to be required under this bill. That while there had been previous studies, that was an ongoing saga, and there had been a lot of community input, and DGS has gone back and forth. There really wasn't a formal mechanism for us to consider the really important public policy of co-location of housing in a place like Chevy Chase, and I think this bill will help us do that every time. And I think it's important that collaboration happens naturally, but it's also important to require it to happen. and I think that this strikes a good balance, and I was glad to hear in the amendments that will come that there's been even further collaboration to try to make sure it works well with the process that happens over on the executive side of the street with DGS. And so I think this is a further example of our commitment on this council to co-locate housing with other public amenities when we have the most leverage. And it will also allow us to have the real difficult and important discussions about, are we getting the best deal and the best bang for our buck, and what does that look like, and what is the feasibility, and all questions where we might differ, but it's an important conversation to have. And so appreciate the sponsors, and look forward to getting into the meat of it. But glad to take it up.
Thank you for that, and I'll turn it over to Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez.
I feel so happy to be here among the two of you because I know you both really care about housing, and I'm pretty sure that we are going to be working together to make a big difference in Montgomery County, without a doubt. I would say that this bill is about building more deeply affordable housing in Montgomery County. It's not just a study about affordable housing, but it's about creating deeply affordable housing. And I think the perfect example is coming up, and it's actually in the county executive's budget with the Wheaton Arts and Culture Center, which I am so excited about. That's a great example of a co-location. We're gonna have a county facility with arts and culture in a district that is arts and entertainment designated district by the state, Wheaton, and having housing around it, and deeply affordable housing, both for rental and purchase. So this is coming at a great time to ensure that communities of color specifically are allowed to live in the county where they work. So with that, I look forward to the conversation on the amendments, which I agree with, by the way, just putting it out there so we can move forward. So that's it. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Appreciate that. I just want to acknowledge two things before I turn it over to Ms. McCartney Green. First, I neglected to mention that council members Mink and Sales have also requested to be added as co-sponsors. That is in the addendum to the packet. Want to thank them as well for their support, and also want to acknowledge my predecessor, Roger Berliner, who did put forward a bill to require co-location of housing. And so this isn't the first time that we're addressing this issue. This is an effort to add some specifics and some weight to that process, to make sure that it works at a time that makes sense for everybody, and that it's done with a level of detail and a time when we actually can use it to help us make decisions, which I ultimately believe will help us lead to more housing opportunities. And I did want to acknowledge, and I think the Wheaton project is an example, Randolph Road was another example. There are co-locations of housing, there are dispositions of housing where we are leveraging public lands, but the question is it the default? Are we doing this as a standard order of practice? Are we making sure that every time we have an opportunity, are we seizing that opportunity? And is the standard we're going to co-locate housing unless there's a good reason not to? Or are we going to co-locate with housing if there's a good enough reason to actually move forward with it? And flipping that burden of standard, so to speak, I think will make a tremendous impact, and why I'm so excited about this. And I'd like to make sure that we don't miss an opportunity at a Chevy Chase library, that we don't miss an opportunity at a place like the White Flint fire station, that we make sure that we are discussing it early on in the process, and that we don't miss an opportunity to do it at the sites where we aren't talking about it necessarily. So I really appreciate it. Want to turn it over to, Councilmember Joanna, please.
And you just, both of you jogged a memory that I wanted to mention. So I had another bill that was not successful, but that is related to this. Councilmember Friesen might remember this, to require 30% affordability, 15 at the normal level, 15 below 50% of AMI on all public land that's disposed of for housing. And I actually think while that wasn't successful, it was an attempt at the same kind of goal of making every time we do housing to get deeply affordable and more of it. And I think this process will enable the conversations that can lead to that, realizing that it's site specific, depending on what the location is. And so just wanted to acknowledge on the affordability point, into what you said, that we've been at this for a while trying to get deeper affordability across public land and public sites. So thank you.
Appreciate that. And I think this bill, I think it's an important point, creates a process that allows us to have the flexibility to do that on a case-by-case basis, but to make sure that we're doing it for every project on a case-by-case basis, that we don't set a standard that might not make sense for every single site, but that we make sure that every single site goes through a process where we consider all options for affordable housing, for deeply affordable housing, to figure out, do we want to subsidize another public use with market rate housing, or do we want to have affordable housing and deeply affordable housing subsidized with the land that we're providing, for instance, et cetera. I think there's lots of opportunities. There isn't a one-size-fits-all on this in terms of the site-by-site, as DGS will, I'm sure, tell us, and I see a strong nod from Mr. Dice. But we need a process that makes sure that we don't leave any site out of that conversation, and make sure that that conversation is happening at a time that it can be actionable. So with that,
Could I be added as co-sponsor?
yes, please.
I thought I was, but
Yes.
I'm asking officially now. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Let's add Councilmember Joanna, of course, as a co-sponsor. And with that, let me turn it over to Ms. McCartney Green with my appreciation for her navigating through the Byzantine efforts of land acquisition and project, capital project approaches, which has been certainly a challenge, and I really appreciate all of your work. So with that, I'll turn to you to take us through the packet.
Sure, and just so everyone's on the same page, there was an addendum to the packet on page 24 that includes comments from the planning board, also the fiscal impact statement, and the notation of the additional co-sponsors by Councilmember Mink and Sales. With that being said, and Councilmember Friedson has laid the groundwork, and just wanted to make sure it was clear that previously under Code Section 25B7, there is a requirement for OMB to transmit with the CIP budget affordable housing assessment, and so that's currently happening. And so what this bill would do would strengthen that process by requiring the feasibility study earlier in the development process. So with that being said, I'll turn to the discussion on page 4, and council staff thought it was helpful just to talk about the process and the phases. It was very hard to narrow down, and so this is just general. This is not an approved process that I've laid out here, but just to give an idea of where we are. And it's also important to know for potential capital projects, the opportunities to be flexible, because adapting to the variety of situations that may happen. And so, as you mentioned, we have our phase 1 and our phase 2. That's on page 4. And so this bill would actually apply to prior to program of requirements and prior to facility planning. Councilmember Friedson, we can talk about an amendment here if you're also interested in doing that now or later in the discussion.
Why don't we just go through the process now, and then after we're done that, we can go through the amendment. But there is an amendment to what I would say to refine the timing here in consideration to some feedback from the executive branch in order to make sure that it is at the most effective and appropriate time.
Sure. All right, so phase 2 would be the facility planning that determines the program of requirements, which details the specifications and the requirements of a facility. It sets the framework, and then the civic engagement process, along with any plans or timeline for reaching the decision. Phase 3 is the actual site selection that will identify and evaluate it, and helps to refine the options that are there. Phase 4 talks about the preliminary design studies that may be developed, that was identified previously, and then phase 5 is where that CIP process happens. And so the purpose of this bill is to specifically require prior to program of requirements, the Department of General Services, as introduced, it says county executive, but I'm also speaking more specifically to the Department of General Services, would be required to complete a feasibility study that includes certain contents of that study. And that's laid out here in the bill, specifically lines 16 to 26. Once the council has received that, there's a time frame that requires that the council to review that feasibility study. And that requires within 30 days after receiving it, the council is required to review it. The analysis will provide the basis for whether or not co-locating affordable housing is possible. And so the council or the committee at that time would have the ability to review that. And if the council agrees that their co-locating is feasible, it would proceed in its normal process and be included in CIP. In the event that the council believes that there's more information to look into or other alternatives as well, the report would go back to the executive branch to look at other options and perform additional analysis within that reasonable time frame. And so When the council reviews the executive capital project plan, like I said, you can do one of the following. You can approve it, you can waive the requirements, or agree that housing is not able to be co-located on that project. The bill also has a waiver provision, and the effective date is July 1st, 2023, after this upcoming council CIP budget. So that was a nutshell, Councilmember Friedson. I'm happy to divulge or explain anything that the committee would like to discuss.
No, I think that works. I think now would be an appropriate time, since you just went through the process while it's fresh in everyone's mind, to move forward with the amendment, just noting that this was worked out with the executive branch based on some of their feedback, which I appreciate, both from the county executive's office and the Department of General Services. Colleagues have a copy of this, but it would amend lines 11 to 15 as follows. Definitions: department means Department of General Services. That is a change from the county executive, to specifically denote the department within the executive branch, which is responsible for this function. It also is important to know, because it used to be the Office of Management and Budget, which is a change here, which I think is important. And affordable housing feasibility study for any applicable capital project prior to the completion of facility planning, the program of requirements, site selection, or land acquisition. So prior to any of those items being completed, the Department of General Services must prepare and submit an affordable housing feasibility study to the council. So just everyone notes that the changes here are, instead of it saying the county executive, it says the department specifically, which is just a refinement. The previous was prior to the completion of the program of requirements, and there was a concern that that might be too early in the process. There wouldn't be enough meaningful information for the council to consider. And so we want to do this before the program of requirements are completed, and before a site selection has been made, before a decision has been made, but at the point at which all of the relevant information is happening. The other thing that's important here to note is that the council is expecting to get the information directly from the department. So anything that goes to the county executive would be transmitted to the county council for consideration, and so we can make an objective decision based on all of the relevant information. I'd be happy to welcome up Department of General Services, Mr. Dice and Mr. Hassan, if you wanted to make any comments here, with the express request that you not snatch conflict from the jaws of consensus.
Or defeat from the jaws of victory. David Dice, Director, Department of General Services. We appreciate the efforts that that this bill puts forth, and we have spent some time working with Ms. McCartney Green on this. And I just thought what would help council, because oftentimes, even though we all work together, we're not as intimately involved, of course, on both sides of Jefferson Street as to exactly what's going on. And so I wanted to take the opportunity to do two things: to provide council members with a better understanding of how this process actually works. Because, in fact, we are looking at, because the law requires us to look at, and because it's also the right thing to do, or maybe it's the other way around, we look at both housing and childcare opportunities for every single capital project that we undertake. And we look at it in the early stages. The way the process is, as Council Vice President and Chair Friedson has pointed out, the council only learns about this long after the fact. But we're actually looking, and these studies are performed early in the process, as the same point that this amendment captures during the program of requirements development. We are looking at housing and or childcare at every project. That's how, as Councilmember Giwando aptly pointed out, the Chevy Chase Library renovation or restoration project, when that came to me with an estimate, I said, well, this is almost the cost of a new library. Let's look at an opportunity. We've got a decent site here. This would be a wonderful place for housing and a library, and do a partnership and maybe get the library thrown in as part of that, or certainly at a reduced cost. And those efforts at that particular site are still going on. I thought it was interesting that there was initial public opposition to housing and now overwhelming public embracing of housing. And I think a lot of that has to do with how much the word gets out about what the intents are. But to go to the chart that Ms. McCartney Green pointed out, not the chart, but the list on page 4, that phase 2 of facility planning, that's actually where we undertake the housing and child care analysis in conjunction with working with the department, our client, if you will, in the development of the program requirements. Because program requirements is directly related to their need. It's not a design document per se. It's just saying we need X number of offices and training rooms and this square footage, and that's the program of requirements. And this is also where we look at the feasibility of housing and child care. And then that also informs subsequently site selection. And the bill captures the fact that there are other constraints. Sometimes sites just aren't available. In certain cases, like fire stations and police stations, we're constrained by proximity and location, service areas, response areas, and things like that that limit us. But otherwise, we do pursue that. But I think these bullets illustrate the challenge. We're doing this work in phase 2. Council only learns about it under phase 5. So this will inform council earlier in the process of the work that we're already doing. And again, I underscore, we do this with every project. So the work's being done, and that's good. We've done a number of projects. I think some of those that are very obvious, and some happened not so long ago, but we may have forgotten. 3rd District Police Station was a co-location with senior affordable housing on the larger site. Silver Spring Library, the housing project right behind the library, was property the county owned that we brought a partner in to develop that. The Chevy Chase Library, the Wheaton Project, and White Flint will also do similar co-locations of housing. So we're always looking at this. I think engaging council members, particularly in their respective districts, and the at-large members will provide that additional analysis and input. I did bring, I think Greg has them, a chart that for the benefit of council, we actually did this some time ago in another context to lay out the process, the design process. And we have hard copies, we can send soft copies, but this might help council members understand exactly how this process works. And you'll note on there that these things are happening early on.
Appreciate it. So I think just to summarize, this is happening in the executive branch. Generally, a decision is made in the executive branch, and long after that decision has been made, the council is notified, which is the current process.
That's correct.
And the purpose of this is to bring the council in earlier as the budget authority, who ultimately would have to make a budget decision if that was part of a project, and who is representative and duly elected by the public to be able to make a decision, because all of these projects are essentially choices. Do we not take full advantage of this site? Do we pay for a need? Do we leverage a partnership? But there are lots of decision points along the way, and I think it's only appropriate that the council be involved in that, and clearly this will allow us to do it. It's not saying that we don't ever do this, it's saying that we don't always do this with the council. And it's happening in the executive branch, and now will be happening in the council, and I think it will avoid, at the end of the process, a scenario where the council is confronted with a binary choice, which is unfortunate. Either delay a project or deny funding for a project for a community need like a library or a recreation center, or don't do housing there. And that's not a good decision. That's not a good decision point. That's not a reasonable conversation for us to have, and so this will help us to avoid that, unfortunate outcome, which is to nobody's benefit, where we're pitting housing against another community need. We want to co-locate housing with those community needs because we think that housing is a significant public benefit. So are recreation centers, so are libraries, so are all these other dynamics. So the amendment, I read the first part. The second part amends lines 15 to 26. I won't read it, but it basically makes some clerical changes to reflect the definition and to change this process, as you heard, for the program of requirements to allow us to be at the appropriate time with the right information.
Yeah, and I agree with everything. As we worked on master plans, like I've been doing master plans for so many years at this point, and in every single sector plan that we work on, we identify key places where we should be building housing.
Yes.
Is there like a master list that you gather from all these different master plans across the county, and you're saying, you know what, the planning board and the county council said that this should be going in this particular location, it should be like on top of our list? Is there something like
The
that?
short answer is yes, but I'll ask Greg to elaborate because he works mostly on those.
Right. Good afternoon, Greg Austin. We certainly do. We have a team that works with park and planning on the development and then through the approvals process of master plans and sector plans. We were all at a groundbreaking just the other day, which is an example of working with park and planning staff on the Veers Mill Corridor plan early and often, understanding the missing middle theme that went along with that, talking to council members, talking to the county executive's office, and getting everybody on board so that when the master plan was adopted and we relocated the recreation department down to Wheaton, we had a viable site. The trick, of course, is having an inventory of all of the county-owned sites in those sector plans. And so there are usually not numerous sites. There's only a few, and it's an occasion. So there's not a robust list of those sites. But certainly, as soon as the master plan or sector plans are delineated, we see what sites we have in those areas. White Flint 2, Veers Mill, even some of the revisiting of Great Seneca and some of the other plans that we've done and now are revisiting. We're constantly taking a look at those. So yes,
Cool.
absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, if I can just add quickly to that, some of these plans are somewhat dated, and we'll have a project that comes out in between or after that fact. But we understand the community's intent. We understand council's intent, and certainly understand my boss's intent to be aggressive in this respect. And so we do go back and revisit those. Even though that may not have been specifically highlighted in a master plan, we still look for that opportunity. Another example of this is a project that's just in its early stages, and that's the Clarksburg Library, which was originally just a pad site in a shopping center, and now we're expanding that with the intent of housing to be a part of that development. I think my point to my earlier remarks, Councilmember Friesman, was simply to point out that this does not represent any additional work for DGS. We're prepared to do this whenever the council would like to see it.
Appreciate that. I think this amendment makes sure that it's at a time that makes sense for everybody, reasonable administratively on your end, and I think appropriate on our end to actually have actionable information that we can make a decision based off of and have a public conversation about priorities and about costs and commitments that are required in order to fulfill those priorities. So I think we can take this without objection from colleagues. So amended as noted. Appreciate that. Turn back to you, Ms. McCartney Green, if you want to go through any feedback from planning. I know we have members of the Park and Planning Commission here, and any other aspects of the packet as you see fit. I think some of it is just informative, so I don't know that we need to do that,
Yes.
but the comments from planning, if you'd like to note those, and please do.
Planning board had three clarifications that they recommended for the bill, and so I'll just talk about them very general. So the first one was a recommendation to amend the definition for affordable housing feasibility study to make it more broader, to include any general services building. And this I'm reading from your packet on page 24. to make sure that's in the addendum. Council staff doesn't disagree with it, but at the same time, the point of this bill was to be very specific with certain projects. And so recommendation here is to keep what is as introduced in the bill, where it is specific to library, rec center, police station, or a fire station. The second clarification that planning had also recommended was for the definition of applicable capital project, suggests that the council include a minimum project size threshold. Interesting, when writing this bill, threshold was used as should we have a threshold, should it be monetary, should it be size or square footage? Recommendation from legislative staff and looking at it was not to use a threshold. Instead, if the project is too small or co-location is not formidable for the project, the study would say that it's not for that reason. And so for those reasons, I would not recommend the amendment here. And then the last, third one by planning board was in terms of clarifying the feasibility study between the existing housing assessment study and the feasibility study that this bill will now implement. Council staff also does not support that. I think it's great to have a process in the beginning that does that, and then right before the CIP, if nothing has changed, then the assessment will say that. And if things have been modified or amended since the feasibility study, the assessment will also say that. And so for those reasons, council staff would not recommend amendments here as well.
Appreciate it. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate the comments. Ultimately, council staff's recommendation is that we don't have to take any action, which I personally agree with, unless there's any concerns from colleagues. I think that's fine. Did we want to comment fiscal impact statement, racial equity statement, economic impact statement?
I can mention it. We did receive the fiscal impact statement, and the cost is zero. DGS has mentioned that the executive was already doing this, and so this would not increase any staff time or any other costs. In terms of the economics impact statement, at this point it is indeterminable just because this is a process that's being changed, not necessarily the impact or the effect of housing. And for the racial equity and social justice impact statement, it is positive, but it is a minimal impact, just considering maybe there's just a limited number of projects that this would affect. But the intent is to increase affordable housing, and it could narrow the racial disparities in housing insecurity.
Terrific. So we're changing a process here. The real impact will be on what fruits the process actually grows, we hope, which is a lot more housing and more public sites. That's where the tremendous economic opportunity, the tremendous equity opportunities, in many cases environmental opportunities, because a lot of these sites have access to transportation, transit, job options, including county jobs, by the way. But this is a process. This is about institutionalizing a process to get to better outcomes. It's ultimately those important decisions that the council and the executive will jointly have to make in terms of prioritizing these efforts and making sure that we co-locate housing on public sites. That's where the real impact will be, the real significant changes to our priorities. But you need to have a plan in order to get to that outcome, and this is part of the plan to do that. So I appreciate that. Ms. McCartney-Green, any other comments?
That concludes the discussion comments that I have.
Any comments from colleagues? With that, why don't we take a vote to approve as amended?
So move.
All right, 3-0, all in favor. And we have our first committee meeting and our first bill. We have one other item. I appreciate the executive branch for joining us today and for your collaboration. Look forward to referring this to the full council and appreciate everybody's support. I should note the millions watching at home. I have been told that I might not say that as much as some other colleagues, but we all say it quite a lot, invoking Councilmember Jawando's comments there. I'm guessing that there might have been many millions watching the last item. There are probably going to be only 1 million watching the current item that we're taking up, with all due respect to Ms. Nadeau. But with that, we have item before us, zoning text amendment 2211, technical corrections. I am the lead sponsor. It's really being put forward on behalf of staff. This is really a technical change and correction that was to reflect the changes that were made to many of our rules and procedures that were done during the interim period where zoning changes can't be made to reflect our growing body that now is at 11 people. And so we ultimately needed to wait to put this forward until the new year. And now that we are in the new year, this has been proposed. And with that, I'll turn to you, Ms. Nadeau, with appreciation for your work.
Thank you. So, as Chair Friedson said, this will change the voting requirements for map amendments and zoning text amendments, and then it's also going to make a few technical corrections to the zoning ordinance. There are things staff has heard about the occasional typo or incorrect reference. Went ahead and did all of that in this one technical correction, ZTA. So Planning Board unanimously recommended approval. The racial equity and social justice impact statement was positive. Because this goes along with the bill that increased the number of council members, which promoted racial equity and social justice in the county. So the change that is being made is, if you look at the staff report on page 2, so for anything that required 5 votes to approve an application, so local map amendments, corrective map amendments, sectional and district map amendments, as well as ZTAs, the number is going from 5 to 6. And then there are certain items where if the council's vote is contrary to what the municipality or the planning board recommended, a higher threshold is required. That number was previously 6, but there was actually the state made the new number 8. I believe Planning Board Chair Zients talked about this at the public hearing last week, that it does heighten the threshold a bit, but to stay consistent with state law, the ZTA also uses the number 8. So those are the changes there. I will note the rules of procedure is on the agenda for council tomorrow, and we'll have these same numbers in there as well. So next up are some other corrections in the ZTA. So first, there was an incorrect reference in section 314A for temporary uses. The next change is the use table, which is section 316, was not alphabetized, so that has been corrected. Section 33G, home health practitioner, was another incorrect reference. Section 372, solar collection system. There were some references to standards in there that were duplicative, so that's been streamlined. Next, for section 421D for density transfers, again, correcting an incorrect reference. And then section 736 for BioHealth Priority Campus, there was a comma missing, so we have now put that comma back in. And those are the changes in this very important CTA.
Any comments from colleagues? Councilmember Jawando.
Say I'd like to, just congratulate you on your copious review of all this, all these corrections, and just move that we approve the ZTEA.
Second?
Great, let's vote. We have a motion and a second to approve the ZTA as proposed, and that's 3-0. And that is the items on our agenda. I'll just note, first of all, thank you to our committee here, the first successful meeting of this new committee. Really excited and looking forward to the work that we're going to do together. And I think if today is any indication, we will do plenty of mundane technical work as the zoning code requires, and we will also make significant steps towards addressing our housing priorities. And I think if today is a reflection of the work that we have to do together over the next 4 years, I think that we're going to do significant things here at this committee in particular, and I'm really looking forward to working with both of you and looking forward to working with council staff and planning and with the executive branch as well as community stakeholders in order to pursue our priorities. So thank you, and with that, we are adjourned.